Well, I have to say that I really hate being just before lunchtime, so I will try to make the next half hour as less painful as possible, but hopefully something that you can actually take away with you as well. So I've been kindly invited by LG Pro to do a really quick presentation on mentally healthy workplaces. So I'm going to go into a bit more detail as to what actually that means, but it's pretty topical given that Are You OK Day only just happened yesterday, okay? But for, I suppose, my session, I actually want to move away from an individual level. I actually want to look more so at organisations as a whole, okay? And how this actually applies to each and every single one of us, regardless of what level you're from. So whether you're, I suppose, a manager, a staff member, or a CEO, and no matter which area of the business you come from as well. Okay, so keep an open mind. I have been asked to do a scenario with you guys as well, so I did bring some incentives just in case no one wants to participate, all right? So we'll press through. So I think economic analyses here in Australia have actually really looked at the cost of mental health conditions here in Australia, okay? And when I talk about mental health conditions, that could either be diagnosed conditions, undiagnosed conditions, pre-existing, or even conditions developed during the course of employment, okay? Now, the cost of mental health conditions is in the billions, all right? And I will go into that specific figure a lot later on. Now, with workplaces can either help employees thrive. And my voice has gone out, but that's all right. I can actually continue just like this as well. I prefer without the mic. Okay, so look, with workplaces. Okay, all right, I'll use the mic then. Okay, so look, with workplaces can really help employees thrive, okay? But on the other hand, workplaces can also contribute to certain stresses, and if those aren't, I suppose, managed appropriately, can also impact on the mental health of individuals as well. All right, so I'll go into that in a bit more detail, but the first things first, if we talk about mentally healthy workplaces, I really want you guys to take a few seconds to kind of really think about, well, what does this mean for me? Okay, it's really hard to work towards something when you've got no idea what you're striving for in the first place. All right, so let me break it down for you. A mentally healthy workplace is a workplace that promotes and protects the mental well-being of staff, okay? And this has flow-on effects to productivity, creativity, retention, okay? And not to mention, as an employer, you would be an employer of choice in the eyes of the public as well. Sounds really good, yeah? Okay? So in terms of common characteristics, what we might typically see are things such as a positive workplace culture, all right? Put really simply, people actually enjoy coming to work, okay? There's a motive there. There's something that actually wakes them up each and every single day as well, all right? Other things is that if there are certain stresses or risks identified in the workplace, so for example, conflict, lack of resources, multiple, I suppose, deadlines and all that sort of stuff as well, if those stresses are identified and managed by each and every single one in the organisation, quite often you'll find organisations that will thrive when things do become a bit tough as well. Other things in that everyone is supported, okay? The fact, or I suppose the reassurance that if you had any particular grievances or issues, okay, that reassurance that you could actually go to an appropriate person in your organisation, raise that issue and have the confidence that that issue will be actually dealt with appropriately as well, okay? Rather than fear of retribution, which we do see unfortunately in some organisations too. Last of all, okay, we do understand that there are certain behaviours which are unhealthy to a workplace. Things such as discrimination, harassment and bullying, a lot of those behaviours are unlawful based on the legislation that we have. All right, but the fact is, if those behaviours were to occur in the workplace, typically what we would hope is that our organisation would actually deal with that appropriately, not encourage that behaviour to continue. You with me so far? Excellent. All right. So we take, I suppose, the flip side of the coin as to what contributes to unhealthy workplace behaviours. There are a lot of different types, and part of that is to actually take a look at your own workplace culture. All right. So some common indicators, for example, that you might not think about too much, okay, whether a majority of employees actually spend a lot of their lunchtime sitting at their desks, okay? Now, I'm not saying that eating at your lunch means you're mentally unwell, All right. But if in the circumstance that if you had no control as to when you could actually take your lunch break, okay, because say there might be unrealistic deadlines, lack of resources, overpressure at work as well, okay, that's a different story. All right. Other things such as being expected to be on call 24/7, so being expected to work way beyond your contracted hours, okay? Now, I know that I do touch my emails from time to time, even outside of work. I know I do that, okay? But again, some people may feel as though they're in a position that they've got no other choice but to respond, all right? So in the long term, that can also impact people quite significantly as well. Other things such as annual leave, okay? So some employees sometimes feel as though they need to stockpile their annual leave because, you know, if they were to go on leave, potentially their role might not be adequately covered, or even fear of losing their job as well. Unfortunately, in some circumstances, people feel that, hey, if I'm out of the picture, that might be my job security that's at threat as well. All right, and last of all, the really, really significant one as to whether employees feel comfortable to really bring up any issues that they may have, whether that's work-related, personal-related, mental health-related, whatever it might be, through the appropriate channels in the workplace as well. Okay, so there's a lot of other different types out there, but my question to you guys, do you know of any other indicators of any unhealthy workplaces? So when I say unhealthy workplaces, what do you think that might look like? I will pick on people, so please. Absolutely. So frequent absenteeism, absolutely. And that's one of the significant factors that I will go into in a bit more detail. One more. What else is there that may indicate that something may be worth taking a look into? Neil at the back. I remember. Is it? Yeah, absolutely. So again, workers' compensation claims or even the frequency of injuries happening in the workplace as well, okay? And that can both be physical and psychological injuries too, all right? So actually come see me afterwards for a prize. All right, so in terms of the cost of unhealthy workplaces, does anyone want to have a guess as to how much this will actually cost Australian businesses per year on average? Throw me a figure. I'll make it easy for you. It's in the billions, so throw me a figure in the billions. 3.6 billion. This is a very good guess, but actually a lot higher than that. You can come see me as well afterwards. What else? Actually, you're on the money, $10.9 billion. Okay, so you can come see me as well. So the cost of unhealthy workplaces, okay, across Australian businesses on average is $10.9 billion. And this figure came from a PwC report in 2014. Jonathan mentioned before the cost of absenteeism, and he's absolutely right. So the $10.9 billion is broken down into the cost of lost productivity, all right? Presenteeism tops the list in the 6 billions, okay, followed by absenteeism and workers' compensation claims as well, all right? So again, a lot of these things are very, very, I suppose, important for us to be quite mindful, all right? Because that money can be spent on a lot of other things, all right? Rather than, I suppose, the retraining, the upskilling, having to recruit and select more people as well because our turnover is so high. Now, PwC in the same report also looked to see, well, if workplaces were to invest in putting in certain strategies to tackle unhealthy workplace behaviour, what is the return on investment? Okay, what's the benefit for these organisations? And what they found was that for every dollar spent on actions taken to create a mentally healthy workplace, they got a return of $2.30. Okay, that's more than double. For some smaller organisations, that return of investment went up to $15 per dollar spent. Okay, so there's a lot of different things that workplaces can do to enhance the well-being in their organisations. And I'll go into that in a bit more detail a lot later on. So in terms of why you should really take a really good look and maybe consider this for your own workplace. And again, it's applicable at all different levels. It's more so that, all of us really want to come into a workplace, I would hope, come into a workplace where everyone does their part, everyone's open to collaborate with one another. If people have beef with one another, I do acknowledge that sometimes we have differences of opinions, yeah? Okay, that we can actually resolve that conflict in a really respectful and, I suppose, collaborative sort of way as well, rather than letting that conflict foster into really, really unpleasant behaviours too. So there's a lot of benefits out there, not to mention, decrease in absenteeism, decrease in presenteeism. Do you guys know what presenteeism is? Yeah, what is it? Yeah, so sometimes presenteeism might be, physically being there in the workplace, but a lot less engaged, okay, a lot less productive as well, yeah? So again, in terms of other things such as improved staff morale, satisfaction, motivation, okay, there's a lot of benefits for us all at any sort of different level too, okay? Now, what I suppose mention at the very, very start is that part of my speech wanted to move away from that individual level, okay? I find that unfortunately too often, we often focus on the person with the mental health condition as the person with the problem, okay? There's a lot of different work factors which operate more on what we call an organisational level, which is very, very important to take note of. And I'll tell you why they're really, really important to take note of. You can send all your staff members to resilience training, stress management training, mental awareness training, give them EAP sessions and all that sort of stuff, okay? You can have all that upskilling in your individual staff, but if they were to come into a workplace where there's high conflict that's not managed appropriately, policies and procedures which aren't followed appropriately, a culture that encourages negative behaviour such as bullying, harassment and discrimination, all right? Do you think they're going to stay? Do you think these people are going to stay in that sort of work environment? Probably not, okay? And for some people may be also at increased risk of developing mental health conditions or psychological injuries as well. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So in terms of organisational factors out there, what you actually note is that a lot of it really comes back down to job design, okay? How does your organisation function? And how does this bring about every single staff member in that business as well? So you can kind of see how that actually starts to go beyond looking much further than an individual. All right, so these organisational risk factors, a lot of our regulators such as Safe Work Australia, WorkSafe WA here in WA as well, even Queensland, a lot of these organisations have actually identified these risk factors to increase the risk of psychological harm in individuals, all right? So things such as unhealthy workplace relationships, things such as a lack of support from colleagues and managers, a lot of the key things that I've really reiterated to you guys before as well. We do have conflict from many, many times in the workplace, but how that's managed, okay, whether that's managed in a respectable way, that can really make a difference as well. When we take a look at individual risk factors, so that's more so looking at an individual, these are risk factors which may actually influence whether a person may have protective factors in regards to their mental health, or whether they may be at more risk as well. Okay, so that's why things such as coping strategies, past experiences, life stages, or even fit with the workplace, those are different things which are also very, very important to keep in mind, all right? So again, I just want you guys to kind of really think across these two levels. Too often we focus on the individual thinking, well, that individual doesn't fit in. They might not fit in, but again, sometimes we actually need to take a look more on that work organisational level, which is where a lot of us can actually make that impact as well. Okay, so where do we start? Part of it, in every single project that you do, part of it is actually considering who do we actually need to get involved, okay? Is it staff that we need to talk to really understand what are the key risks and issues that they feel are present for them, okay? How do we bring those people together? Another part of it might be the consultation strategy. How do we engage at all different levels of the organisation? How do we engage with our leaders, our CEOs, to actually say, hey, this is a really, really important thing for us all to really pay attention to? How do we engage people in different sectors of the business who may be a bit jaded to these sort of things, thinking, well, you know, the local government's operated this way for 10 years. We don't expect anything to change, all right? But there's a lot of things that we can actually do in regards to this as well. And part of that might be actually acknowledging our challenges, all right? What sort of barriers might we actually come up against? And how can we actually approach each and every single one of those barriers and review that a lot later on down the track? So the key thing is that I really do want to emphasize to you 3 key things if you really want to make any of these interventions successful. Part of it is that you're going to need leadership commitment. Okay, so whether that person's a director, an owner of that business, a leader, okay, you're going to need commitment, because if you want people to be engaged, to follow, to participate, it's really, really hard to if your leaders at the top aren't doing that as well. A lot of organisations I hear often say, we're a people-based organisation, we put our people first. But when you turn to their staff say, well, no, unfortunately, we don't see it that way. Okay, so again, that sort of, you know, disconnection can really be detrimental as well. So besides from, you know, speaking all those fancy words out there, those mottos, those values that an organisation might have, actions are going to be very, very important. So if any of you guys here in this room today are part of that leadership team, all right, be very, very, I suppose, considerate as to how you can actually engage your staff and what you can actually do for yourself as well to really demonstrate those actions and values that you want in your organisation too. For everyone else, again, so applicable of what area of the business you're from, okay, it's not just a HR issue, it's not just an OSH issue as well. You know, opportunities to participate. If you've got any ideas as to how you can contribute to the well-being of your organisation, why not speak up? Okay, if there's not an appropriate forum for you to share those ideas through, why not make a suggestion as to how employees might be encouraged to get their opinions and, I suppose, contributions across? Communication, all of us, I'm pretty sure, know what communication is. As to whether we use that effectively, that might be another discussion at another time as well. But communication is absolutely critical, okay? Informed staff are engaged staff. And quite often, a lot of the trap falls, particularly communication, is where staff feel as though they have no idea what on earth is going on in their organisation, okay? And that can be very detrimental, particularly when there's significant periods of change, things such as restructure, things such as job insecurity, other sort of, you know, economic type issues that might flow into the organisation as well. So if you really want to work together, again, get your basics right. So other things in terms of identifying the risks in the workplace might be actually to look at the trends and the sources of workplace data that you guys already have on hand. So I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys might be familiar with employment engagement surveys, okay, or pulse surveys, where again, a lot of staff get the opportunity to give some sort of feedback in regards to the organisation. Other things such as workers' compensation, okay, or whether there's any sort of incident reports, accidents that might be happening as well. Things where there might be comments or observations that you see within your team or see within other teams as well. So there's a lot of different places where you can actually get a lot of data to really indicate to you what might be our starting points of priority as well, okay? A lot of this stuff will really involve your strategy. It's not chucking out a policy out there and hoping it's going to stick, hoping it's going to float. More so thinking, well, how are these different things going to play a part of the bigger picture? Because ultimately, a lot of the stuff is going to feed back into your own workplace culture, and all of us know that's not going to be changed overnight. In terms of strategies, there's a lot of guidance out there. What I've got on the screen is a very, very short list. So depending on the key issues that you identify within your organisation, part of it might be actually looking at the strategy that you're going to put in place to actually address that. So for example, okay, cultural change is a massive, massive thing. Quite often there's going to be a lot of different tasks that you need to also include to form part of the bigger plan. Part of it might be actually upskilling, okay? So if your managers or I suppose team leaders might struggle in having difficult conversations with their staff who may raise, I suppose, unhealthy workplace behaviours or conflicts or grievances, whatever it might be, maybe part of your strategy might be upskilling those people, okay, to provide them the tools, the knowledge to actually have these conversations a bit more comfortably, all right? Other things, for example, might be also ensuring that you've got things such as peer support programs, health and wellbeing programs, so people can actually look after themselves in many, many different ways. When I do my mental health workshops, I always stress to people that you need to also take into consideration your physical body as well. All right, it's not just your mind that operates in isolation. So a lot of those programs are very, very important too. So what I'm going to do now, I hope you guys have been paying attention, is that I'm going to read a scenario out to you guys. I'm going to read a scenario, and in your groups, I want you to have a bit of a think about the questions I'm going to ask you, because I'm going to ask for a few answers as well. All right, so listening carefully. Alrighty, so you're a manager of a medium-sized local government which employs approximately 150 employees. So that's a mix of full-time, part-time, casual type staff. Approximately 1.5 years ago, the whole local government underwent a significant restructure which resulted in the merging of several roles and redundancies across the organisation at all different levels. Employees at the time received very little communication about the need for the structure, and for some who've had their roles merged, found that they were expected to commence their additional new duties without any further support or training. They also didn't have, I suppose, any additional guidance to help them settle in their roles as well. Now, employees have access to an employee assistance program, so that's like the counselling service. But there seems to be a general low mood due to the majority of staff struggling to keep up with the increase in workload and lack of additional resources and manpower. The CEO has advised all managers, including yourself, that they want to make staff more resilient as there will be more significant structural changes in the next 6 months. So here's my first question that I want you to have a chat amongst your tables. What are the organisational risks present in this scenario? So spend some time, have a think about it. What are the organisational risks identified from this scenario? So sorry about that. There you go. Thank you very much. All right, so you've had an opportunity just to discuss about the organisational risks. Now, is anyone willing to share with me what some of the organisational risks are? Yep, at the back. That's all right. I'll come over to you because I'm going to give you something anyways. Okay?
Low self-esteem in the office, people leaving due to job insecurities, not knowing what they're doing, reputational risk through social media throughout the community, legislation deadlines not being met, active unionism, legal action, and increased stress leave.
Excellent. So some really good suggestions there. Here you go. Thank you so much. So yeah, absolutely. In terms of the organisational risks, there are a lot out there. So here's my second question to you guys. Again, in your groups, have a really quick discussion. Where could you get more information or data to determine that if there are any other additional organisational risks to be aware of? Okay, so have a think about in your groups, where could you get some more data and information, okay, that might be able to identify any other organisational risks? All right, so where else could you get some more data, okay, that might be able to help identify if there's any other risks to be aware of? Yeah?
Tomorrow. LGIS. We also had the complaints systems that you have in place, rate increases, and the statistics from your HR department, your sick leave and absenteeism.
Absolutely. So again, look, best port of call, we're more than happy to help. But again, if you really want to identify the risks specific to your organisation, take a look at the internal data that you guys might have. Okay, so yeah, absolutely. Your HR might be a really, really good starting point. If your OSH is looking after workers' compensation, return to works, whatever incident reports, they might be another good another good starting point as well. So excellent. All right, so here's the last one. So in your groups, just a couple of minutes to discuss, okay? For that scenario there, what are some strategies you could suggest? All right, so very quickly in your groups, think about some of the strategies you might be able to put in place in regards to this scenario. They asked me to get rid of it. So yeah. I've got all conversations like get rid of it. Oh yeah. Oh, can you give it to someone else? All right, everyone. So, what strategies did your tables come up with?
Hi. We thought, so communication is often the biggest issue, so there could maybe be a development of a staff working group to take feedback back to HR and higher management.
Perfect. Wonderful. And that's a really, really good starting point. So thank you. I will definitely come over and give you something there as well. Another strategy. Yes. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, employee well-being programs as well as upskilling the staff. You know, trainings may be required to, obviously, if they are taking more roles and responsibilities, so then they need to be confident that they can do that role. So maybe some training.
Absolutely, and you hit the nail on the head as well. So in that scenario there was a lot of people who moved into merged roles and didn't feel that they had the adequate training to do that. So yeah, that could definitely be a really valuable strategy as well. So look, it's lunchtime. Okay, but just that, I suppose the key resources that I do want to kind of turn your attention to is that there's a lot of guidance out there. Okay, and this doesn't have to be for CEOs or for HR to read. It can be for anyone to read. So please take a look at these organisations. They're freely available. They actually even have how-to guides as well. So thank you very much for your time. If there are questions, I'll be more than happy to take them. But I also will be here during lunch as well. So if you want to approach me one-on-one, please feel free to do so as well.